Howard University students who attend the Wilder School for either undergraduate or graduate studies. You can follow the link in the chat for more information. As many of you may know, if you follow the Wilder School, the Commonwealth poll is now available to everyone, and we'll actually be discussing more in March. So more to come in terms of RSVPing for our next Lunch and Learn, where we discuss the Commonwealth poll. Next, fall 2024 graduate application deadlines for ACEP, criminal justice, public administration, urban and regional planning, April 1st. ACEP is May 24th, just a little bit after. So please, if you know anyone who's interested in graduate school with the Wilder School, now is the time to apply. And without any further ado, I introduce Dean Gooden to introduce our moderator and speaker.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And I join Stephen in welcoming everyone to today's webinar. We are particularly delighted to have Wilder School alumnus Shawn Talmadge with us today as we learn more about the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. But I do want to give a warm invitation to everyone to join us next week for our Wilder School annual legislative reception. That's going to be next Thursday, February 29th from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. at the Omni Richmond Hotel in downtown Richmond. So please come out, interact with fellow alumni, policymakers, legislative aides, all of those who are working large and small to advance public service. So we encourage you to join us for that event next week. And now I'm happy to introduce our moderator for this afternoon's session, Dr. Will Pelfrey, who is a professor of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness and Criminal Justice in the Wilder School. Many of you have probably seen or heard Will because he often provides public commentary on issues related to criminal justice and Homeland Security of the day. We're delighted to have him as a colleague, and Will, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dean Gooden. I appreciate those kind words. We are lucky in Virginia to have a sophisticated Department of Emergency Management, and not all states have that luxury. In Virginia, the Department of Emergency Management has a number of missions and tasks. Some of them are pretty straightforward, or at least not, I shouldn't say straightforward. They're what we would expect: distribution of funds, assist in response, help local agencies as they prepare for future issues, crises, disasters. But VDEM also has a important and compelling education component. Some of that revolves around training. Some of that revolves around advancing some of the goals and missions of VDEM. This is really about assisting agencies, assisting personnel, and making sure that the people who are on the front lines in a disaster, in a crisis, are as well prepared as they possibly can be. And that education mission is pretty close to my heart as a professor. And I'm thrilled that VDEM is led by Shawn Talmadge, who has a wealth of experience in a variety of really important areas. He worked in local public safety and fire and EMS in nearby Hanover County. He's worked for the Virginia National Guard for decades and brings to VDEM a host of experience, really valuable knowledge. Traditionally, people in emergency management or emergency preparedness follow a single lane. They work in fire, they work in public safety, they work in local government, and they bring with them a lot of knowledge. But when you have somebody who is in a position of authority that has experience that's both local, statewide, he's worked with federal agencies, and he's worked in governor's cabinet. So he knows all the ins and outs. That's great. It's great for VDEM, and it's great for us because we have so many students, alumni who work at VDEM. We have internships. We have this fabulous relationship with VDEM, and it has benefited us from an education standpoint, from a practitioner standpoint. So we're very lucky to have Shawn here today, and we're lucky to have a close relationship with VDEM. So thank you, Shawn, for participating in this. Shawn's going to talk for a while about resilience, I'm really interested in hearing what he has to say, and then we'll field questions. So if you have questions at any time through this process, please place them in the chat. I'll be reviewing them and I'll direct those towards Shawn. So Shawn, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the warm welcome. And let me tell you, I'm just so excited to join you today as an alumni, but just have an opportunity to engage just a wonderful group. And you're right, Will, it's about relationships, it's about partnerships. Working almost 3 decades in public safety, that's something we never overemphasize. And we absolutely respect that within the public safety profession. And to Dr. Gooden and the Douglas Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs, thank you so much for having me today. It's an honor just to come back and give back a little bit and have an interesting conversation about such an important topic. And so I'm going to start. The theme today is I'm going to start off with a people focus, and I want to return to that after I kind of describe how the Department of Emergency Management is helping to build resiliency across the Commonwealth. And there's things that you and I can do on a daily basis. But starting off with that people focus is, how do we describe resiliency or resilience? And, many people say it's, bending versus breaking. What can people do on their own in their lives to build capacity or the ability to bounce back? Some folks use the words crisis and all hazards, but what does that really mean? Is that economic stressors? Is that environmental impacts due to a weather storm? Is it some other sort of technological influence, like maybe a hazardous material is released that's impacting a community? So those are stressors to a community. But what I'd like to, leave you with is we all have responsibilities in helping to build community resilience. And so at the end, I'll leave you with a question. What can you do in your professional lives, in your responsibilities as in your career, but your personal lives and with your families and the folks that you hang out with? What can you do to help build resilience across the Commonwealth? Because it's not just my responsibility or yours, it's everyone's responsibility. And I think that's the theme for the Department of Emergency Management. We are this kind of all hazards, jack of all trades, master of none organization that we have functions across the entire spectrum. But the power of our ability to influence is our connection with our localities through our local emergency managers, and then with our state agency partners, many of which are online with us today, which is fantastic. And that's a very unique relationship that we have in Virginia. And I just want to tell you about, 6 or 7 significant ways in which the department's building resiliency across the Commonwealth. And certainly, hopefully, that'll spawn some questions and some ideas towards the end. But again, we're going to start off people focus, and we're going to return back to that. So Dr. Pelfrey did mention, we manage a number of grants that are really focused on building resiliency and hazard mitigation. And so what's fantastic is the federal government has really taken an interest in this space. And so there's a number of programs. I think across our entire grant portfolio, we are managing 28 grant programs with over 70 open grant cycles. And so certainly emergency management, the red lights and siren, the search and rescue teams are going out on a daily basis. Our hazmat teams responded. But did you know the Department of Emergency Management is really building capacity by supporting our localities and state agencies with over $2 billion worth of money over the next couple of years. And that's both to help us pay for responses to COVID and other recent emergencies, but more importantly, to build capacity and build resiliency in a number of grant programs like flood mitigation assistance, where we elevate homes or we work with communities and purchase homes to relocate families and get them out of the recurring flood areas. There's the federal Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant program, which is fantastic. And we're leveraging that not only just for flooding, but looking at like interesting and innovative ways to build capacity For example, we're looking at renewable energy sources, or the use of battery, like large battery storage. I'm talking tractor trailers, where we can pull in a tractor trailer and provide immediate energy without the requirement of fuel to hospitals, or dialysis centers, or other facilities that would need energy right away during some sort of power outage. And so these grant programs are doing fantastic work. And here's a perfect example of partnering with our communities. Up in Colonial Beach, there are about 45 homes that sit along the Potomac River that face significant flooding damage risk, and damage to the shore of that river. The community stepped up to the plate and submitted for a flood mitigation assistance grant. And the fantastic news, for about $2.1 million of investment, there are now 45 homes, a fire department, a pump house for public utilities, along with communication infrastructure that are now protected essentially for 50 years plus. Now, remember what I said, $2 million of investment. Now, the value of those homes, over 18 million. And so think about that from an investment perspective. You can't get that rate of return in the stock market. It's amazing. And so I got to see, following Ophelia last year, the impacts of that storm and that nor'easter effect on that shoreline. And they had just completed the project, and there was no risk to those 45 homes and that infrastructure in that area. And what's really neat is we partnered with the community. There is a 5 to 10% match at the local or maybe state level for many of these grant programs, sometimes 25%. But the bottom line is, community members stepped up to the plate and provided in-kind services that met the local match. So the locality paid $0 out of pocket. And that's just amazing testament to partnering with our localities, making sure they understand how they can use these grants to their advantage, and finding unique ways to fund them, sometimes at no cost. And so that was just a fantastic investment. We appreciate our partnership with FEMA to make that a reality. And that's just one story of hundreds that are going on across the Commonwealth. And it's just fantastic watching that happen. We also build resilience through one of our core functions, and Will kind of briefly touched on planning, right? And preparing for disasters. If we have no plan, or the relationships don't exist between our state agencies, our partners, like our localities, it would be a pickup game every time we face an emergency, whether it be a weather event or a man-made disaster. So I'm really, really excited and really proud of our Virginia Emergency Support Team. And this is not a VDEM thing. This is a whole of state approach, whole of Virginia approach to managing emergencies and planning for them. So the VEST includes over 300 partners, and that are our state agency partners. We have nonprofit folks that join us, NGOs, members of industry, because we are so diverse in our VEST in terms of composition that provides us an just absolutely impressive capacity. If we need expertise in the energy sector, well, Dominion's sitting at the table. If we need help in terms of manufacturing PPE, for example, during the COVID response, we partnered with cut sew factories right here in Virginia, ultimately producing personal protective equipment right here in Virginia, using all Virginia materials. And we would have never known that if we hadn't reached out to industry saying, hey, can you help us, make hand sanitizer or other commodities that are at low production across the globe. It just the demand was too high. So just a fantastic opportunity. And so reaching out to our VEST partners, we have routine touch points. We train with them twice a month. We have exercises throughout the year. And again, one would say, well, you're just exercising a plan. That's the real purpose. I would argue it's more of, rehearsing and building the relationships that are necessary to manage a catastrophic event. Because let's face it, if we're good at the bread and butter, responding to a hurricane, we can respond to just about anything that's complicated. And that team is really a problem-solving team. And that interagency approach makes it just a fantastic team to deal with any kind of emergency, regardless the cause. And of course, we are focused on hurricane. A fun fact, coastal storms are not the big threat to Virginia. Inland flooding caused by remnants of coastal storms have actually caused more deaths in Virginia than any other storm type. So 156, if I recall correctly, Virginians died due to an inland storm. So that's just that's one scenario that we work towards. And I think another one that's really big, is probably top of mind for folks on the call today, is cyber-enabled issues, right? So cyber is interesting because it spans the lifeline. It spans the critical infrastructure sectors in terms of an enabler. The way we communicate, the way we control power systems, it's enabled by the cyber domain. Virginia was the first in the nation to conduct a exercise with a critical infrastructure operator. And in this case, it was Dominion. And we did this in the summer of 22. In which we simulated a large-scale power outage due to a cyber attack from a nation-state actor. During that scenario, the governor, during the exercise, declared a state of emergency and directed the National Guard to provide direct cyber support to Dominion. And so we walked through all the authorities and validated that the governor, in fact, has those authorities. And it was a fantastic demonstration of another problem-solving opportunity, and that's putting incredible capability in our National Guard on Dominion systems to rehearse a catastrophic type event, and ultimately that provides the support that Dominion to restore power faster. And so that's our big goal, is to reduce the impact on the public. Again, we're building capacity, we're building resiliency through exercising and through training together. Our next area is risk management and risk assessment. One of the really awesome things about the department is, I mentioned our VEST, over 300 partners. We are a clearinghouse of risk assessments. And so we do publish the threats, hazards, risk assessment for FEMA. It's one of our FEMA grant requirements. But it's important to also reach out to our partners, for example, the Virginia Fusion Center, who conduct a risk assessment from the lens of crime and terrorism. Well, guess what? We pull that in as an input for consideration of our statewide threat and risk. And so it's really important to balance the needs of the Commonwealth, but have a holistic perspective. Like, we cannot stovepipe ourselves into an emergency management threat assessment. We really need to open up the aperture, because again, we want to respond to all hazards and understand threats across the board. So yeah, we're coordinated with the Department of Health. What are our concerns and issues from a public health risk standpoint? And of course, I mentioned the Fusion Center, a great partner of ours. I'm really proud of that relationship. I'd like to talk about the next area of resiliency, and it's really about our public and public information. And this, some folks call it cognitive defense, but you and I both know there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation out there. And a recent case study is in Hawaii, following the aftermath of the tragic wildland fires in Hawaii. And open source media reported, and this is well known, China influencing the public there, discrediting not only the federal government response, but also the state government response. And really what they're doing is planting a seed of doubt in the public of Hawaii. And it is unfortunate that is our current contemporary environment in which we live, is this, we're connected globally, but it's so important for emergency managers, public safety officials to connect with the public. And we can build resiliency there through a number of activities. First is becoming a trusted resource, and really during blue sky days like we have today is really demonstrating and reaching out to the public and providing them tools. But more importantly, becoming that resource, that consistent resource of proper information, the correct information. And you do that through, routine social media. And again, this may sound silly of some sort, but yes, you have to have a good social media presence today. We also, we have the Office of Community Impact, a team here at the Department of Emergency Management. Their whole function, their whole goal is to connect with all communities across the Commonwealth. And we do that through trusted community leaders. And we really want to try to understand all communities, like who has cars and who doesn't, who is dependent on public transportation, or who has specific health needs, what languages are spoken across our communities. It does no good if our website is only offered in English. We've got to reach out to all communities that live across our Commonwealth. And so the Office of Community Impact is focused on and working very closely with our public affairs team to make sure that we are reaching all communities and understand their perspective, and we communicate in the best way possible. Now, as we shift from blue sky, we shift into crisis messaging. What are the instructions? Who needs to evacuate? Where's the proper place to get the best information? And so you'll see our team shifting towards an interagency effort under this Joint Information Center construct, where we're designing themes and messages. We're monitoring our messages to ensure that we're reaching all communities, and that we're ensuring that all of our information is 100% accurate as best as we can, so that the citizens and residents of Virginia are aware of what actions they need to take and where they need to go. And it's just absolutely paramount. And it really goes back to building trust. I can't do my job. I can't stand in front of a podium and articulate that we are doing everything possible and an incident's under control unless I have the trust of the public. So that's what's really important about public information and building that capacity of understanding across our Commonwealth. And I also want to highlight, during Blue Sky Days, we put out a lot of information guides. For example, we have a hurricane preparedness guide, multi-languages, and it's both for the coastal part of Virginia, but we have a second one for inland flooding. There's some nuances to those types of emergencies. And that's one example of how we're doing public education, and then partnering with our localities to get that message out. I'm really proud of also shifting some of our staff focused on some of the communities that are underserved or most at risk across the Commonwealth. And that could be a social economic stressor, or it could be a government financial stressor in terms of, hey, I can only afford a part-time emergency manager. And so over the last 3 or 4 years, the department's really shifted towards seeking opportunities to really bolster the capability at the local level. And one of them is we call it our RAMS program, and it's not about VCU. It's our recovery and mitigation specialists. And we have these across the Commonwealth in all 7 of our regions. And the RAMS are focused on recovery efforts and really mitigating future risk. And so these teams are really focused on taking advantage of the grants that I opened up speaking about. And so for underserved communities, or perhaps it's a county or a city that has a part-time emergency manager, these teammates will go in and help them write for grants. And so what we're doing is we're shifting staffing resources towards underserved communities to really build capacity, and it's a fantastic opportunity to connect with our localities, but also buy down future risks, sometimes at the most risk residents of Virginia. Now, I do want to shift towards, and again, I'm beginning to wrap up here, so hopefully we generated some questions and some discussion. And the next is you and I have got to recognize the resiliency of our people, our teammates that we work with day in and day out. And just like any other public safety organization, mental health is a big concern of mine. I talk to some of my colleagues across the United States. Sometimes they have a 40% turnover year to year, that's almost half of the staff of an organization. And that's absolutely unsustainable. I don't know how some of my fellow directors do it. So here at the Department of Emergency Management, we take mental health extremely serious, and so we have a number of ways of building resiliency. Obviously, we have the employee assistance programs and the like, but we also leverage it's a peer-reviewed app called Headspace, which is fantastic. We got the Headspace app on all of our phones, and there are tools on there to help us learn about ourselves, but it could be relaxation techniques. It could be, how to sleep better, how to take care of yourself. There's all kinds of topics. And again, it's peer reviewed, and it's a fantastic investment that's used across our agency. But we also encourage taking care of each other. We have a culture of teamwork here, a culture of team. A lot of times my teammates use the word family. We got each other's back. And so we expect and we treat each other with dignity and respect. But more importantly, the first Friday afternoon of every month is our Mental Health Friday. So we focus our staff that afternoon. There are no meetings unless I have to go downtown. But there are no meetings, and division directors are expected to have some sort of team building event, checking on each other in terms of our teammates, and having time to take care of yourself. Because if we take care of ourselves, we'll be able to take care of others, both here at the Department of Emergency Management, but our Commonwealth and all residents. And so we take this mental health program very serious, and there are other ways that I reinforce this culture of taking care of each other. And on every Thursday morning at 8:30, we have family time, we have team time, where the entire agency is online at 8:30, and we're talking about some of the stuff I'm working on. So I talk about guidance from the governor's office, my interactions with Secretary Cole. The General Assembly is in session right now, so maybe, hey, this is what's going on at the General Assembly and how it impacts us. And then we have a down and in section of that period where we're trying to build connections across the entire organization. And the way I sell it is out in the field, for our field responders, they can't do their job unless somebody at headquarters helps them buy it. We got the procurement team, and of course the procurement team can't do their job until people tell them what to buy. And so what I found is by reinforcing the connections across our organization, we have a feeling of a team. We have a feeling of mutual respect, and it's been fantastic. And of course, investing in our people is one of the greatest ways that we can help them not only professionally develop, but also build their capacity in terms of mental health and keeping all of us ready to work and ready to work hard. So I do want to talk about an emerging threat, and this is a big concern of mine that's been kind of talked about in open source media, and most recently up on Capitol Hill, the director of the FBI, the CISA director, and the White House cybersecurity advisor. There is a growing nation-state threat, and I want you to know that we're preparing for it now. Again, building resiliency through planning, through building relationships, and taking a look at threats we face today and tomorrow. And so really that growing nation state threat is the ability for nation states to conduct coordinated cyber attacks across our infrastructure. I'm not talking, the isolated power outage due to a windstorm. I'm talking about disrupted sectors simultaneously. It could be water, transportation, and energy all at the same time. And are we prepared to respond and protect the public? And so in about 6 weeks, the department, along with our VEST partners, we're going to kick off a very deliberate planning process to take a look at that specific growing threat. And how do we coordinate amongst that diverse critical infrastructure disruption, right? It's not just one sector, it's going to be multiple, maybe four. But what are the other unique requirements? Would that fall underneath the Stafford Act, where we can go to FEMA and request support, both financial support, but also emergency response capabilities? Under such scenarios, this could mean the deployment of the Department of Defense. Well, what does that mean for Virginia? Do we need to provide them security support while they deploy overseas, or would they be a particular target from this type of scenario? And so, again, we are preparing for these types of emerging threats, to include potential misinformation, disinformation campaigns like we saw in Hawaii. And let's see here. And so as I begin to close, I do want to kind of shift towards what I opened up with. And this is really about people. And so our heart here, my heart and our heart here at the Department of Emergency Management is really about the survivor. It's about the people of Virginia. And we're not alone. The department's not alone in terms of conducting its mission, and you and I are not alone. Everyone plays a role in building resiliency. And the question is, how do you fit into that equation? How do you and your daily activities and your family at your community level, how are you helping out? And there's enormous opportunities out there. And so being an emergency manager and being prepared, it's really how we assist communities to remain stable in its welfare, right? It's economic status. It's a place of good jobs, a good place to live. Community services are stable. And notice what I'm saying. This is a whole of community issue. And so I'm really proud of what the Virginia Department of Emergency Management is doing to help build resiliency at the local level. I'm really proud of it, that we recognize that it's just not us, that it's over 300 partners, all state agencies. Matter of fact, institutes of higher education. Many are state shelter locations, right? And so not only are you serving your students and your faculty, you're also, many of you, and VCU being one, is prepared to serve the residents of Virginia in what could be the worst day of their lives. And I just want to thank you for that. I want to thank all of our teammates for the partnership and just providing us the capability to serve all residents. And again, it's about people. It's about building resiliency and recognizing it's not a single stovepipe issue. We're trying to build communities that can bounce back faster. And that starts with the individuals like you and me. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Gooden, and Will, back to you.
Thank you so much, Coordinator Talmadge. That was a really interesting talk. You raised a lot of points that I find compelling. The individual nature of resilience. It's about people. We tend to think of communities as this homogenous entity, and it's not. A community is comprised of individuals, of people. So resilience starts at the individual level and then kind of builds up to a pyramid. I really liked your points about working together as a group within VDEM and self-care, understanding the pressures and stresses of the job, particularly in the response lane. I really hope that the dean heard what you said about no meetings on the first Friday of every month. I really like that. Perhaps that could be expanded to many days every week or every month. But reflecting on the nature of the position, the impacts, and that's something that should be viewed across all of public safety and some other lanes of government as well. So you brought up a lot of really great points, and I appreciate it. I've been fielding or collecting, and some of our staff in the Wilder School have been collecting questions from the audience, and there's a lot of really good questions. As moderator, I'm going to lead with a question of my own. Emergency management or emergency managers tend to come into the field from one of a few areas, and there's some diversity in backgrounds, but we tend to see a lot of people from fire, from government, from other public safety positions. Can you talk about what VDEM and the broader field is doing to enhance diversity among emergency managers and consider issues of equity across emergency response. You mentioned how important it is that messages be received and recognized. And that's true for a lot of the population, but there's some swaths of the population that are a little bit suspicious of government. So things like changes in diversity, recognizing issues of equity, those are important in securing trust of the agency and effectiveness of communication. So if you would talk about those kinds of issues a little bit, please.
No, I really enjoy that. That's a great question, and I love it. And so, really proud here at VDEM. If you took the top 27 leadership roles at VDEM, 20 are lady teammates, which is fantastic. And I'm really proud of the diversity of VDEM, but we're not resting there. Internship programs. Bringing in, honestly, this is a great opportunity for me to tell the story of VDEM. And yes, VDEM's hiring. We are the best state agency and we have the best mission. And so folks, if you're looking for a job, we're going to have a hiring blitz starting in March. And like this evening, I'm putting skin in the game. Like, you got Brian Moran teaching the capstone course for the undergrad, and I'll be speaking tonight with those folks, which I really look forward to. And really, it's about getting the news out and being very intentional on how you engaging communities. And so right now, we're looking at a college internship program that'll be paid. It's under development. It's not ready for prime time. But yeah, we want to bring in a diverse community. So we're going to be visiting colleges and universities and try to bring in like a college recruiter, right? And it starts with internships too, because what we're learning is that work experience is so critical to gaining credibility and teaching communication skills. And it also validates, like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I did this internship. These are the products that I built and developed, and I really want this job. I know because I did it for 12 weeks or whatever it may be. And so by the way, you and I spoke, I want to develop the relationship between our organization and the schools. And I'm ready to send a paid fellow to you as a researcher in exchange for some academic, right? And so I look forward to that opportunity. And now, and you got to be intentional in terms of working with our communities as well, right? And I highlighted some of those. We're really blessed here in Virginia because we had, thought leaders like Curtis Brown coming in and really digging in some of the diversity, equity, opportunity, inclusion type programs and engaging with communities. And that whole idea of the Office of Community Impact really was Curtis's, idea that we've developed and staffed. And that team is focused on ensuring that our plans are under, takes into account all communities, that our programs, our website was, I'll be honest, our website was non-compliant last year and we fixed that, right? And through self-help, we identified that's a problem, let's fix it. So now multilingual and trying to reach out to all communities. And so the work's never going to be done. And I so appreciate the diverse team at VDEM. It makes us stronger, in terms of our thought. Our solutions are stronger because of our interactions, not within our department, but bringing in subject matter experts and from other state agencies or other resources. And so we'll never be done. We'll keep on moving forward. And of course, we also have the Emergency Management Equity Working Group, which I chair. It's codified in code. And our conversations there are, hey, are we engaging all communities? If we're not, why and how do we fix it? And so it's a fantastic group with access functional needs experts, members of the community that are experts in all, and our federally recognized tribes as well.
Thank you. Those are you brought up a lot of really interesting points there about recognition of the issues of diversity and equity, and VDEM is one of the national leaders on that front and is doing things that I'm hoping other states and localities model. The importance of messaging and communication and strategic or purposeful hiring, those are critical elements. I loved your point towards internships. We have so many students in the Wilder School who pursue internships. And while we generally try not to say that one agency is the very best, I love pointing students towards VDEM because they get such great experience. The Wilder School has public administration and urban and regional planning and criminal justice and homeland security. And VDEM touches all of those issues. It's not a single lane position or entity. You're going to work with government people. You're going to develop some financial acumen and economic issues and grant writing experience. So internships there are fabulous, and they can really lead to good jobs either at the state level or at the locality. We've had some interesting questions come up. One was about something that you brought up earlier about relative to resilience, social cohesion, communities and neighborhoods. The communities and neighborhoods that have a high degree of social cohesion are probably going to respond better to crises and then recover faster. So the question is about how can we improve the design of our cities and neighborhoods to enhance community resilience and then subsequently improve things like recovery?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm gonna. Well, I would say just, what my gut says. There's a couple ideas. Community events, like trying to get the community out to connect with public safety agencies. There's a number of those already. And by the way, we like to leverage those opportunities. But from a design standpoint, you're like my mom's moving to Midlothian, which is fantastic. From Roanoke. Roanoke's home. So if you got any Roanoke Valley folks on, I'm a proud Roanoker. That's where I went to high school. And but she's moving into a housing development that is centered around a community center. And guess what they're doing this summer? They're gonna have little concerts and stuff. And think about my mom, 82 years old. She'll be able to wobble out there and meet other folks. And it's good for her. It's good for the community. They're making connections. And so you mentioned urban design. I mean, I think that there's a part to that. And you're seeing more of these housing development areas that have some sort of community center. And that's the opportunity for the city or the county to leverage it, right? What a great outreach opportunity to get the message out about, safety or emergency preparedness, or, hey, we're having a rash of stolen vehicles, all the silly stuff that's happening across our communities. And so you can connect, and you and I can also measure effectiveness. Like, hey, these folks are, I thought they were at this level of resilience. They're actually higher or maybe lower, and so really it's just, so that's a design idea that I have. And I guess anytime that we can have an opportunity to emphasize our connections, that's going to happen. But part of that, you want to keep families together too, right? So do our rural parts of Virginia where families usually are born and raised, do they have the good jobs where families can decide to stay there? What you're seeing is mom and dad stay there, but the youngins take off, right? And so we got to figure that out, right? And what's, remember, resiliency is not about emergency preparedness. It's about economics. It's about safe place to live. It's about emergency preparedness to all threats, right? So yeah, those are some ideas there.
Those are great ideas. Thank you. Those point to issues of design and planning. And so there's the prospective element, what do we do with new communities that are under construction or under consideration? There's a retrospective piece too about existing communities and neighborhoods and what can they do or what can they change or incorporate. And my kids love community events. So we are ardent participators in all of our neighborhood events. You talked in your presentation about PPE production, and that brought up some issues about private sector. We think of VDEM and preparedness with communities and neighborhoods, with local and state agencies, but the private sector is a huge component of Virginia. Can you talk about VDEM's relationship with the private sector, particularly around resilience and preparedness? Do you work with private agencies or businesses to say, here's what you're doing, here's some strategies for fostering resilience and planning for disasters? And then there's the analog of how do you work with private sector on blue sky days and then in crises?
Yeah, I love that question. And as you were asking the question, my mind was beginning to develop the answer. Number one, I think emergency managers at a certain point, maybe it's you and me both, everyone. We're in the relationship business. I'll be honest. And that's how we solved the PPE problem here in Virginia, by the way. We can go back to that if you want, but the answer is absolutely yes. We work a lot with the private sector, and we're actually expanding that relationship as we speak. We call it, there are two areas that we're expanding our support. One is called the Endeavor project. So again, we applied for a grant because my agency's primarily grant funded 70%. And I appreciate that, but we applied for a grant. We brought in a team, and we launched the Endeavor program last year, and we're getting ready. It's been about 12 months, and our next meeting, we're codifying some of that relationships. But bottom line, the Endeavor is over 1,700 separate private sector partners that they raised their hand and said, "Hey, I want to be a part of this." And it's everything. It's really a conduit. It's a relationship where we talk about emergency preparedness. We share ideas. We can send a request. Hey, nobody can make us hand sanitizer. Can someone make us hand sanitizer? And it's both a blue sky day and during crisis, we're going to send them our daily sit reps. Like, hey, this is what's going on in Virginia for this, tornado outbreak, or maybe it's a hurricane or rain event. And by the way, here are our concerns, and this is how you can get ready, or this is how you can help us, stay off the roads, close your businesses, let VDOT do their job, all that stuff. But more importantly, they can say, you know what, Shawn, I can help with that. And the members of Endeavor, it's like our executive committee is chaired by a member of one of our energy co-ops. Wegmans is on there, Target, communication sector, I can't remember which one. It's a very diverse group. Obviously the Dominions and all these big partners, but these are Lowe's, Home Depot, and so 1,700, and then the list is growing. And what's really cool is that grant was only to fund the development. It's now self-sustaining by the members of industry. So I'm sitting back reaping the benefits of this group, and we have awesome collaboration, blue sky and dark sky, and it's fantastic. And they can help us solve problems, and we can coach them on how, or you know what, they'll share amongst themselves. Somebody will raise their hand. I'm a small grocery store, Wegmans. How are you doing this, right? And they'll help each other out. The second area is we're just getting ready to relaunch our critical infrastructure working group. And on the 28th, next week of February, same thing, like 85 to 90% of all critical infrastructure owned by the private sector. We've got to engage those folks. And so we're going to use our state agencies. For example, Virginia Department of Energy, they know the energy sector, they know the pipeline sector. So, hey, Virginia Department of Energy, what's critical, who are the folks operating in Virginia or influencing Virginia, and so we're going to leverage our state partners to better understand our critical infrastructure, and engage them on, hey, we can provide you these services prior to. Are you aware of CISA? Are you aware of FEMA opportunities and all this other stuff? And we're partnering to solve problems. So fantastic question, though. It's about relationships, and absolutely, we got to engage the private sector.
Well, that's a tremendous success that you just described, getting private sector leaders together, building an organization, and then have it be self-sustaining. That's pretty remarkable. And the private sector is always going to be more nimble than government, just because of the nature of bureaucracies. So when there's that reciprocal relationship, when they can tell you, here's what we're seeing, and you can give them information that they couldn't get otherwise, that's going to foster trust. It's going to foster effectiveness and efficacy, and everybody's going to be better off in the long run. That's fabulous. So that's a win. You and I have talked about emergency managers, their roles, their backgrounds, and we've talked about research in that area. And VDEM collects really good information about emergency managers and their authority. There are jurisdictions and localities in Virginia where emergency management is done really, really well. Richmond, Roanoke, Alexandria, Fairfax, they have sophisticated emergency management systems, personnel, resources. The converse also exists. There are places in Virginia where an emergency manager it's a timeshare. It's 20% of somebody's job. It's a gig thing. And people aren't really the emergency manager until there's an emergency. And that sets up a whole cascade effect of preparedness and planning issues. Can you talk a little bit about what VDEM is doing or thinking relative to these underserved communities?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the examples is the RAM program. You know, we're focusing staffing support to those that don't have the capacity to get after mitigation grants. And folks, you know, for every dollar we invest on mitigation, it saves us $6 to $7 at a time of an emergency, which is fantastic. That's a huge return on investment. So that's just one example of staffing support. But I would also say we have effective relationships in place. So number one, you got to identify those communities that have those challenges in staffing and capacity. And so again, really proud of the design of VDEM. We have the 7 VDEM regions, and each region has about 6 or 7, maybe up to 12 VDEM staff that's focused on different areas. One's a planner, one's a responder, one's a chief regional coordinator. We got a hazmat officer in there, and so it's multidisciplinary approach. But we at the state wouldn't have any understanding if it wasn't for those effective, respectful, mutual trust at that local level. So we have a list. Only 49% of Virginia localities have a full-time emergency manager, and that's tough for me. And so we recognize that. We know where our hotspots are, and so we're going to flood that area with additional support. And some of the ways we do that is we'll shift regional staff from one region to another to back them up. During the Buchanan floods, I drove up there and sat with the local emergency manager, which, by the way, was Buchanan County's full-time a building inspector, right? So he was the building official, and we have a lot of houses to get inspected, but he's doing emergency management duties and not, so we recognize that, and we will skew effort. So we're going to make sure they have at least a basic emergency operations plan. We're going to stand ready and step in and provide exercises at the county, city level if they need that. And so we're just partnering with them to make sure that they're as best prepared. And then we're going to really shift effort to those localities.
That's a great response. That recognition of some areas have what they need, and you can help them when they need it, but they don't need a lot of help most of the time. And then there are other areas that have so many needs, and you're prioritizing needs, you're prioritizing resources, and there's a lot of really difficult decisions to be made. It would be fabulous to have infinite resources, and you could go to every locality and say, here's everything you might need under any contingency, but that's not the real world. So that's a great anecdote about building inspector. The running joke in public administration and emergency preparedness is the dog catcher sometimes has those, and that's never the case, but I don't know, building inspector, that's not too far. That's not a job that prepares you well for disaster response.
Well,
so,
there was a house in the middle of the street, kind of like that song, but we had to have it inspected before we moved it.
That's great. So we've only got about 4 or 5 minutes left. So I'm going to give you 2 questions. One is pretty straightforward and one is impossible. The first question, where would you point people who are interested in internships, in jobs? Is there a place on the VDEM website that people should look at? How can people find those opportunities? And the second question is, what keeps you up at night?
Awesome. Okay, so real quick, because I don't want to run out of time. Folks, if you're looking for jobs, internships, all the above, there's a couple ways. Follow us on LinkedIn. Look around the region. I don't want you leaving Virginia, but DC's got a great program. Maryland, North Carolina, we work with those folks a lot. So definitely take a look at their systems and opportunities. So LinkedIn. Don't forget the professional association. So the Virginia Emergency Management Association, they have an annual symposium. It's coming up next month. Great place. You know, there are student memberships, professional memberships, but they help us advocate with the General Assembly. They have training resources. They have a credential program. You know, you can get your like a professional emergency management credential from them. And again, credentials goes towards training and experience, and you're demonstrating that for folks that want to get into this space. And also there's the International Association of Emergency Management and the National Association of the National Emergency Management Association, NEMA, that does fantastic work. And so definitely look for those internship opportunities. The website, you know, we have a website. Again, we're going to start a hiring blitz here shortly. And what keeps me up at night, I tell you what, when 3 agency heads for the federal government goes to Capitol Hill and describes this coordinated cyber attack capability and attributes it to China and their decision to implement their global strategy, and they're going to, you know, part of that is to delay the U.S. response, and they're going to do that by impacting our public. And so that is what keeps me up at night. Are we prepared? Have we prepared the public to stand up against that type of scenario? Have we prepared ourselves to communicate under such duress? And it's not like a natural weather event. This is deliberate targeting of our systems and our people. And I would offer, we've been through this before. So there's no need to react violently towards this. If you go study the history of emergency management, VDEM was founded in 1950 as a part of a requirement of the federal civil defense agency. Guess what? We were a civil defense organization at our roots of our profession back in 1950. So we've dealt with this problem and we've been through it together. And so we are going to start to focus on that challenge. It'll make us stronger as a community, stronger as a nation. And we're preparing now to protect Virginians. So Will, thanks for that very interesting question. And I hopefully that was helpful.
Well, thank you so much, Shawn. This was fabulous. This is the best lunch and learn that I can remember. So really interesting questions, really interesting positions. Thank you so much for doing this. And thank you to everyone in the audience who posted questions. This has been fabulous. Stephen, you've got just a little bit of time.
Thanks, Dr. Pelfrey, and thank you, Mr. Talmadge. What a great discussion. I also am gonna thank you for that button at the end, because if it kept you up at night, I think it was gonna keep all of us up at night. But you gave us the history of of emergency management, and I think it's important to know that, you know, there are folks working when we're sleeping, so we don't have to worry about that. Again, thank you both. Thank you to our communications team who's in the background. Thank you to all those who joined us for your lunch today. We really appreciate the consistent show of support for this virtual event, and today's topic is a great one, and we have another great one coming up on March 20th. We'll have Dr. Robin McDougall, who is the Associate Dean of Research and Outreach, Associate Professor of Criminal Justice out here at the Wilder School, who will be discussing Virginians' opinions, insights from the Commonwealth poll. And so we're really looking forward to that. I hope everyone here will join us on March 20th. And without further ado, thank you so much and have a great rest of your Wednesday.